Yo, 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 everybody, what's up? Welcome to another edition of Josh Says Mean Things. I'm your host today, Josh Baker, coming to you live from the Azulux Visual Studios. Ooh, that ring light's a little bright today. Let's turn that down. So we have a fun episode. We have a couple photos. We're going to be talking about hand placements and croppings. And something else I want to talk about, we posted about it on our Patreon today, not today, a couple days ago, but about composition. I really want to talk more about composition. I think we get too caught up in thinking about rule of thirds or centered composition or points in our autofocus. And so I really want to talk today and use some of these photos to talk about the weight of a photo and weighting elements, right? So we use the soccer analogy to talk about, playing the right weight of a pass so that it lands on the attacker's right at the attacker's foot, right at the right moment. So just that kind of like weight where it has a balance to it somewhere. So there's a fulcrum point somewhere in the photo, and then it's weighted against something else. So we can do up or down, top or bottom, or front and back. So we're going to talk about that some. So that's the term we're going to be using today, is the weight of a photo for their just for their what kind of balance they achieve or what kind of contrast they achieve with the elements in the frame. Okay. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. If you're out there listening, say hey in the comments. I'm reading them over here. They'll be in the stream here in a second. But just let me know who's out there. I see Kendra and Mark and Steven. What's up, guys? How are y'all? So yeah, just let me know who's out there, because then I can give y'all shout outs and say hello to those who are supporting us. We are wearing the Says Mean Things shirts. So if you want to walk around with a shirt that says Mean Things, there's a link in the comments to go, and you can get your own shirt that says Mean Things, because now we can say mean things to each other. Now it's not really mean, but it's maybe it means it says average things. Nobody's ever asked me that, huh? Says mean things might mean average instead. It might be saying Josh says average things about people's photos. So maybe that's the way it is. So Patty, what's up, Patty? Patty Robertson, good to see you. Awesome. Great. Well, I appreciate y'all tuning in and joining me on another. Boy, what a beautiful day in Austin today. We took the kids outside and played a whole bunch on a trampoline and threw the football around. Man, it was just a nice day. Makes me want to go out and enjoy it a little bit better than the weather we had this weekend. So anyway, this first photo is from Mr. Mark Lasad, one of our great patrons. If you like supporting what we do, there's a link right there in the lower left, patreon.com/ hey Dragon Link. Yeah, say hey in the comments. Exactly. Patreon.com/ Azulux. So all of these photos are mostly from all of our patrons, or maybe I special requested from somebody to send me a photo. Oh, also I took 3 different photos from this round, and you'll see them, but I did some alternative edits. They don't take my opinion as the only way to edit it, but I took a couple photos and made an edit based on my taste and kind of what I saw. And then before we get started, I also want to say I've been getting a lot of requests for this. So the next Lightroom Live that we're going to do is I'm going to show you how I edit a session and talk about I'm gonna shoot a session tomorrow, I think, and then what's up, Omar? Omar's coming. I'm gonna shoot a session tomorrow, and then I'm gonna do a speed edit. So I'm gonna show you how I can process like 500 photos in 15 minutes. That sound good? It sounds good to me. I've been getting some requests for it, so we'll be talking through that. So that'll be the next Lightroom Live. I'll be doing a batch edit of all of my like of an entire session to show you how I can process a lot of photos so I can shoot more and edit less. Awesome. Okay. Anyway, so let's talk about this first photo from Mr. Mark here. What I like about this, and I think it's very illustrative, and it's a great photo to lead off our discussion today, which is when we're looking at this photo of the leaves, is there any doubt which leaf Mark wants us to look at first? Right. There's no doubt. If you can see where my little cursor is there, I don't know if that comes through, but It's the one in the kind of the upper right of the photo, right? It's absolutely the brightest photo. It's exactly where the eye goes, right? And then you can kind of go around those kind of middle four are kind of the next brightest. And then there's leaves on the bottom, there's leaves on the top, but they're so much darker that it forces your eye to go exactly to the brightest one. Okay. There's also some other interesting, I think, post processing going. But I like that there's not a lot of forest in this. It's leaves and bark. It is not leaves and bark and the rest of the forest, because then it would be distracting, right? I think black and white's a great choice. I'm sure if Brian's watching out there, he would agree. Mr. Brian, black and white. That should be his new Instagram, Brian Black and White. But I think this is very illustrative of the photographer picking something, whatever. What's up, M? Present accounted for. But I think this is very illustrative of a photographer picking one thing, right? In this case, this leaf, and it says, I want you to look at this. And I'm going to make my edit based around the fact that that's where I want your eye to go. And everything else is subservient to that one in the group, right? So this is kind of our, our rock star with the backing band, right? The spotlight's on the lead singer. The rest of the leaves are kind of the backing band, right? Versus if all of them were the same exposure, right? That'd be more like the Beatles, where they all were the same importance, right? Hashtag George Harrison. I think this is just another way. I think this is a good goal to get to, where as a photographer, you're picking something, and in your edit, you're making it the star of the show. All right. So good job, Mark. I really like it. I'm not exactly sure what you did with post, but I like it. I dig it. It's good. It's moody, and we know exactly what you want us to see. So very good. All right. And as Omar sent me this photo. So this is Omar's edit of this photo, and he sent me the raw file, and the next photo we're going to see is my edit. So there's some good stuff going on. I think I've shot in the same parking garage. I'm not entirely sure, but I think I have. I love shooting in parking garages. I love bare concrete. I love shooting against bare concrete. It's just, for me, I like that aesthetic. Parking garages have a lot of concrete, so they're great for me. But you also get these cool like shafts of light to play with. You usually have some diagonals and verticals and horizontal lines to go against. So I think all in all, like, I love shooting on parking garages. And, they're weatherproof in the sense that you're not going to get rained out. You just have to go down a floor and you're fine. Okay, so I think there's a lot going on. I like her look. I think it's a flattering pose, where she's kind of turned. She seems, I don't know her, but she seems a little curvier. And so I think if she was straight at us, right, it wouldn't be as flattering. I think we have a good S curve, right, from her knee to her hips, shoulders, gaze, right? So I think we have a good S going on as far as posing. And I like the way the light's hitting her right cheek. So all of that is going good. Here's where the edit, I think, could be more beneficial. I want that light's hitting her eye, but there's a couple things in the photo that are distracting, that are as bright or brighter, where your eye wants to jump and it doesn't come back to her face, right? So look at her hands. Her hands are very bright. And so they're getting a lot of light, and they're bright. So it's pulling attention away from the face. And then by her ankles, there's a whole big spot of concrete there that's also very bright. And so it's kind of pulling our attention away. So we're looking at the dead space on the ground. We're looking at her hands. Sometimes we're looking at her face. But we haven't really picked what we want our focus to be. We haven't picked, look at the face and then work your way down. Okay. So we kind of have a couple different entry points, and it doesn't flow. And so what I did the other thing, there's a diagonal line in the back. There's a vertical line that's like not quite vertical, right kind of over her left shoulder. They're kind of angling away, and it probably doesn't bother anybody else, but it bothers me. Now I would say y'all aren't going to see this, but in the edit, there's kind of there's a white window light that got cropped out. So I think that was a good choice to crop that out. And I did the same thing in my crop. So let's take a look just so I can kind of talk through what I did to change it. So I did a couple things. One, I used radial filters to knock down the brightness in her kind of hands and arms, because they were just a little hot there, and so I think it keeps our attention to the face. I also used a radial in Lightroom, a radial tool over that concrete to bring down the brightness in that hot spot behind her. So it's still bright, but it's less bright than her face. And so this gives us a little bit more attention to her face, and then kind of works around. So face, hands, bright spot, face, hands, bright spot. So then we kind of work in that order. I also did some color grading to kind of play up with the red in her hair and blues in her shadows. That's just, I like that, red and blues. I also kind of killed the background a little more. I took down my shadows so that the background didn't show texture. So if we flip back, look at the area behind her. I don't know that that texture adds to this photo. I think this photo is about the light. Hey, Chris, what's up? I think this photo is about the light on her face and like the textures on the ground. And I think adding texture in the background is just too much. And so I just lowered the shadows. It's still there a little bit, but it's a lot darker than before. And so I kept the contrast on her cheeks. So I didn't bring up the exposure on her left cheek. I let that go to more shadow and kept the highlight just on there. Now, I'm going to make a post in the next couple days on the Patreon, and I'm going to include this preset and all the other presets that I created for the photos that I edited. So if you want to see what I did, I saved the presets so you can get an idea of like what I did for color grading or what I did for like highlights and whites and shadows and all that. So the other thing I did, I kept this as a 3x2 crop because it's a full body, and I wanted to kind of talk about that verticality that she has. Whereas I think Omar did more of an 8x10. And the 8x10 just feels like a little bit too much negative space on the right-hand side. And I think this vertical is a little bit more balanced. What's up, Mary? How you doing? All the way from the East Coast. Good to see you. So yeah, just a different edit. But the reason I did the things I did was to keep the brightest thing, her face. The second brightest I wanted to be for her hands. The third brightest was that kind of hot spot behind her feet. And in doing so, I think it draws more attention to her eyes, to her lips, to her hair. So that's why I did what I did. So hope you enjoyed that. I'll be writing a post for my patrons, and I'll include this as a preset so y'all can see what I did. The wedge of the concrete at the bottom. Yeah, I went back and forth on that. That's a great question. I went back and forth on that. I actually originally cropped this as an 8x10 and brought it up. I don't know. I could have. I kind of like the radial diagonals, but yeah, I probably should have come up to the shadows. No, that's a good question. But I did it the first time, and then I don't know why I didn't do it the second time. But yeah, you're right. I think it was better coming up, the bottom of the crop coming up to the shadow on the bottom. Yeah, it's probably good. Cool. All right, this one comes from Chris, another East Coaster all the way from Maryland, I think, right? She used to be here in Austin, though, so that's how we met. So here we have a tree silhouette at sunset, okay? So a couple things. Yeah, 4x5 for Instagram. Yeah, you got to do it for the gram, man. You got to do it for the gram, right? So this one from Chris, right? It's a great sky. I love getting skies like this, right? Orange and blues and just the whole sky's on fire, right? Love it. I think with a lot of sunsets, a lot of sunrises, waterfalls, anything that's like really majestic and big, I think the hardest part is finding something to put in the foreground to give us a three-dimensional photo. And so in this case, we have a middle ground, right? We have a tree, and we have a little bit of a skyline, and then we have the sunset, right? So we have an occluded sunset view. So I like the exposure here. It's pretty good. I like that it's underexposed to really bring out the vibrancy of the sky. This is another photo that I took the liberty to edit without permission. So Chris, I hope you're okay with it because I edited this one as well. So what I'm doing in the edit though, let's talk about what we see. So there's a little bit of some buildings in the background there, and Chris sent me the raw, so I assume she wanted me to edit. Otherwise, I don't know why. But I wanted to bring up some of the detail in that shadow level in the foreground to give us a little bit more depth. I know, watermarks. The other thing, I really wanted to play up the blue. If we notice in the upper left and kind of in the upper top, there's some blue in the sky. So I really wanted to bring that out. So I did some color grading as well. And I did some luminance blending where I brought up the luminance of the blues and kind of brought down the luminance of the oranges to bring up that. The other thing, the bottom, there's like a skyline, and it's not quite straight. It's kind of pointed, well, it's pointed away from center. And so I straightened that up as well. So let's take a look at see kind of what we did. Yeah. So mine is much bluer. Now, the other thing I did on this photo in Lightroom was I took down texture. I was probably -20 texture and -20 clarity. And I did that to give it a softer, kind of more painterly feel. I wanted to downplay all the sticks and twigs, right? I wanted to make that a little bit smoother. But also by I boosted the shadows to 100%, and I boosted the blacks to like 20. But if you notice in the right-hand corner now, we have a little bit of this like blue, part of a blue building. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but that gives us a little bit of foreground. And then I straightened up the horizon. And then we have just a little bit of this like old style building in the background. And so to me, that gives it just a little bit more depth. And it separates out that, that shed or the edge of the building on the right. I'm not sure what it is. But that gives us a little bit of an anchor. It gives us a little bit of blue to really play with the orange and yellows in the left. So yeah, I did a lot of color grading on this. And I did some like luminance as well, just to really play up orange and blue contrast even more. But then also to soften it up by taking out the clarity and taking out the texture to soften it up. I think an interesting photo here too would be to make it even more chaotic and shoot maybe just like the upper third of the photo. So taking just the upper third where it's just sky and twigs and no real branches, just like chaos. That could be an interesting photo too. So yeah, sunsets are fun. Always fun. They always happen so fast. You have, I have 5 minutes to do something. Go. Right. There's always that rush of like, yeah, now what? Is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? Cool. The sky's on fire. Let's go. Right. There's always that rush. So yeah, but really great sunset, Chris. All right. This one is from, who's this one from? I think it is. Oh, I'm going to get their name wrong. I'm blanking on the name. Rachel. Yeah, sorry. This is from Rachel. So I love the softness and the turn to the light. The other thing I really want to point out about this photo is her shape matches the shape of the tall grass in the background. Can we see that, right? So everything's kind of leaning that way, and she's kind of leaning that way. Oh, sorry. Well, my screen is reversed, but I love that she's kind of in the same pose as the trees behind her. And I think you don't necessarily notice it, and it doesn't scream that you're doing that, but the soft light and the softness of the grass and her face turned to the light just so really gives it that nice everything's working together, right? The other thing, the sun gives that little bit of catch light. Her eyes are pretty dark. And so having her turn to the light gives her just that little bit of a catch light to add that light in her eyes. I think if she had turned to the shadow side, her eyes would not have had that catch. The other thing that's nice about shooting on the beach is the whole ground is a reflector, right? So you're getting that light bouncing back in and kind of softens up those shadows. But I really like kind of everything that's going on over here, the blues, the greens, the yellows, and then her pose. Now, here's my critique, though, and this is going to happen in a couple more photos in this round. Watch the hands. The hands are, we see a thumb and no other fingers, right? So she has like one video game thumb and nothing else. So really watch what we're doing with the hands there. We could back up like 2% and keep her hands in it. And I think it would be a little bit, it wouldn't be as jarring. Or we could crop in to maybe like just below her clavicle, like right here, just crop in there. And I think then it wouldn't matter so much that we don't see her hands. But you know, hands up, across, kind of over, right? If her hands were kind of up by her face as she turned, that could look really nice as well. Or, you know, even opposite side, right? Either way. But just something to get those hands in there to keep the nice lines, right? Or if her hands were mimicking the waves in the crowds, right? So like if her hands were also in the same shape that the grass was in, up, I think that's going to give it just that last bit of taking it from kind of like a B plus photo to like an A. So that's kind of that last little hunt to go over, is getting those hands somewhere in there. The other thing, right on that elbow, she has like a scar or scab or something. I'd clone stamp that out. But otherwise, it's really lovely. I love the way the grass and her face are kind of working together. And I like that in our weighting of our photo, the gaze that she's looking in the frame, she has room to look, right? She has room to look in the frame, right? Imagine this crop opposite where she was cut off and there was the negative space was on her shadow side. Think about how more like claustrophobic that would feel, right? So in this crop, it feels nice and open, right? But just taking that frame and sliding it across, it would feel very claustrophobic. So good things. So anyway, really nice, Rachel. Thanks for submitting that one. All right, this is from Michelle. Baby cake smash. I tried doing this with my son for his first birthday. It didn't go well. We found blue icing. We had a blue ox cake. I know, Azul ox, blue ox. We found blue icing in our house for like 3 months. It was everywhere. All right, so this is a photo where I think an 8x10 crop would have been better. It's still 3x2, and so we have a lot of space above our head and below the cake. Also the white balance. So a great way to change white balance is use in Lightroom, go to the eyedropper. And she's wearing a white shirt, so you can just eyedrop it onto her shirt. I think it would have taken that out and kind of neutralized some of the oranges here. The other thing is the focus is on the hands and not the face. So the depth of field was such that her hands are in focus, but her face isn't. So you know, it does have a bunch of, you know, sparkles and sprinkles on it, but I would have liked to see the eyes in focus. Now, if you want to get that photo, and if you want to get that photo of the hands coming closer and show just the hands in focus and her face blurry to really, like, what am I looking at specifically, right? Just the hands in focus and let the face go out of focus. I think that could be a composition as well. Or holding up the cake, or feet in the cake, right? Or whatever. So some of this is like picking what you want to be in focus and really like hammering that home. Like don't leave it up to the viewer to decide what we want to see. As a photographer, we should hit people with a hammer, a velvet hammer, right? A very soft hammer, and say, I want you to look at this. Now we can do it with subtle cues. But if we judge it, we should be able to, we should know what we're trying to say. We should know what we're trying to see. And we shouldn't leave that to chance. So yeah, that's what I would do here. I bet they had a fun time with it though. So yeah, either come in really close and get just the hands in focus with all the cake on them, or let's get the eyes in focus so that we can see kind of what the rest of that expression is. I would boost the exposure a little bit too. It's probably a half to a stop underexposed, just a little bit bright. And then I would crop it to an 8x10 because there's a lot of dead space under the cake and there's a lot of negative space that we don't need above the cake. So there you go. Thanks, Michelle. All right, this is from Mark. And Mark, you took this like Sunday night, right? He was like, man, I don't have a submission. I'm gonna go shoot. I was like, I love the attitude, right? Let's go shoot. So I think this photo is a great way to talk about a fulcrum in our compositions. So this is a very good symmetrical composition, right? We have just the same amount on the right as we do on the left, right? We have a table and a chair on the right. We have a table and chair on the left. We have a potted plant on the right. We have a potted plant on the left. We have an open drawer on the right. We have an open drawer on the left. So we have kind of a mirror image, even though it's not a mirror image, but the composition is mirrored. What's cool about this, at the very bottom, there's a notch, right? So we have this rail coming through or a curb, and then we have a notch right there. And that notch is actually the fulcrum of the photo. Okay, can we see that lighting? Can we see that weighting? WEIGHT, not waiting like waiting for Guffman or waiting for the train, but like, I weigh too much, right? So we have that good fulcrum there. And so I think that's a really neat composition. Also, I think this 16 by 9 cinematic crop is really cool, because it compresses and really accentuates the linearity. Ooh, I don't know. The linear nature of the photo. I don't know if linearity is a word. That doesn't sound right to me. Yeah, that notch is great, right? It provides that fulcrum. And I think it's a great visual way to see, right? We have like linear curb, linear rail, linear rail, linear curb. And then we have some vertical lines and then some more horizontal lines. And that notch really provides that balance. It also gives us a good foreground, right? This without that without that curve there, we don't have that foreground. And so we have a middle ground, a foreground, and a background going on here. And we can see all the way into the shop. I bet it was hard to control the highlights here. Tungsten can lighting at night it's very easy to blow out, right? It's very easy to overexpose it. I really love this photo. I think it's really, really cool. Some options for it. I'm not saying you have to put this. I like it just the way it is, right? But like a slow shutter speed and like people walking through it, right? Blurring, right? That could be something. Somebody like coming out and yelling in one of the windows to break the pattern, right? It's such a symmetrical photo. So imagine if you have like, a Mario coming out like, you damn kids. You took my candies. I don't know. Like something going on to break that. It's very serene. And so to play with that contrast, you could have something not serene in the rest of the photo, or a cat walking by or a cat on the steps. I don't know. Just that one little thing. I think that would take it to a whole nother, like, oh, this happened by chance. I already had the composition. I was just waiting for something to happen. And that's really what street photography is about. You find the compositions that you want and just wait for things to happen in that frame. Street photography takes an insane amount of patience. I love looking at good street photographers. I am not good at it. I've tried. I'm not good at it, but I love it. I love knowing just knowing the stories that went into them. There's a really great, if y'all want to look somebody up, there's a great person in the UK. I believe his name's Greg Funnell, Funnel, Greg Funnell. He has a series called On the Night Bus. It's really great. And then he's doing stuff in the London financial district during quarantine where everybody's gone and is really playing with lights and shadows and colors. And anyway, it's really good. Greg Funnell, he's one of my favorite street photographers right now. So anyway, really good photo, Mark. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about, those highlights. Yeah, what Mary says, that right above the word sweet, there's a bright spot there that's pretty bright, but it's so hard to control those. You could have tried to do, I don't know if you had a tripod, but like an HDR might have worked here. Not HDR like the old school HDR, but like just getting a couple raw photos and combining them in Lightroom so that you can control the shadows and highlights a little bit more. So, but otherwise, really good job. Yeah. All right. This one's from Ronnie. I think this is a really well weighted photo. I think this photo is actually the best example in this whole bunch about weighting. The heaviest thing is on the bottom. And this, I don't know what that is. Some fruit. I don't know what that is. Some crazy fruit. I don't know. But it's at the bottom. What's up, B? We were just talking about you, man. We're talking about you should change your Instagram to Brian Black and White. But I really love that fruit is at the bottom and it's the heaviest thing. And then we kind of follow that line of the iron up to the red. So we go from positive, right? We go from the brightness of the fruit to the darkness leaning up of the iron. And then that leads us back to the red and black of the leaves. And then that brings us right back down to the fruit. And then we go up, and then we go down, and then we go up, right? And so we follow that three-piece, right? We go up, over, down, up, over, down. And our eyes, it's very easy to just run your eyes around in that loop. I think the colors are really good, right? That bright red and black. It's almost monochromatic, right? It's almost like orange and red, a little bit of yellow, right? Orange, red, and black. So we've reduced, like we don't see a lot of the greens. We don't see a lot of the background. And so I think that's good. There's a little bit of a hot spot just to the right of the column there. And I would I would clone that out. The other thing I would do, that that column is kind of running away from you just a little bit of a straightening up, just a little bit to keep it more vertical because it's kind of running away from that. So keeping that straight, I think, would make it even a better still life. But I really like the pattern of that up, down to the fruit, that runs up to the leaves, right? You can't leave the photo. There's no like real easy escape place for your eyes to escape out. So good weight there. And I don't know what that fruit is, but it looks interesting. Is it edible? I don't know. I'm not sure. If anybody knows what that is, I'd love to know what it is. All right, this is from Jessica. Jessica was just we just did a Let's Get Weird workshop at Precision Camera this weekend, and Jessica was our model. And we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of strange onlookers. People were walking by like, what are y'all doing? But we had a lot of fun here. So again, kind of like the beach photo, just as humans, you want to keep their hands. Animals, we want to keep their feet too. So here we have a pirate dog, apparently below his knee joints there. He's walking on peg legs. No, so we have a little bit of negative space. I would have just dropped down like another foot so that we can see our doggo's feet there. But I do like the balance of a sheepdog and the sheep, right? We have the weight in the lower left and the dark dog, the white sheep out of focus, right? So we have a balance there. I just would have liked my composition to come down a little bit, maybe right at the horizon line, just below the horizon line. The sky is not part of the composition, so coming down there and then keeping our dog's feet in there so that we can see his paws. But I love the balance between a sheepdog and his herd, right? And so we kind of have that yin and yang going on there of white sheep, dark dog, and working back and forth. All right, this one's from Mary. So this one's actually, I don't know if you meant this to be a pun, but I think it's a pun the more I looked at it. So I don't know if you meant it to be that way. So this is a photo of, he's the number one ranked, well, at different times of the year. Sometimes he's the number one ranked golfer in the world, and his name is Dustin Johnson. But if we look at our crop and the way he's leaning, the tree becomes his name. It could be anyway. But I do like that we have the action in the lower left. This isn't a normal composition, right? We have all this action of a torqued body and the head of a golf club with his eyes looking forward. And then we have all of this space for him to exist in. So the action's in a very small part, and then we have all this kind of negative space and just texture, right? He's wearing pink and blue and white against this kind of like subdued background. And so I think I like this, right? I think this is also a great type of photo for, right, if you're submitting it to like a magazine and they want to put text in a story, we have a lot of room and good room to put, Dustin Johnson tees off, right? Or something like that. So we have room for that text to go. It's an unusual composition that's somewhat eye-catching. That tree becomes, right, that the tree with the white bark kind of becomes a bisecting element in the frame, and he's on the left of it, and then we have trees and nature on the right. And so there's a lot. The only thing that would make it crazy is if the ball were somewhere in this frame, right? But with golf, you can't shoot till after they've made impact, so almost impossible to get. I realize that's an impossibility. But yeah, I just like it. I like that it's you kind of have to work for it. You're not just given this composition, right? It's not just like, oh, that's the person in the middle of the frame, right? Your eyes kind of have to do a little work, right? So this one has a little bit different weighting, right? He's so famous. If you follow golf like I do, he's literally the number one player in the world. Very famous against this kind of like different backdrop. So because he's famous, he requires more space. Yeah. Cool. Good job, Mary. All right. This one comes to us from Marion, Texas, the team down there at Farmhouse Photography. I think this is one of the students down there at Marion High School. And Miss Tiffany submitted it to us. So yeah, this one, they were doing I think she told me like, pretty photo in an ugly space. And so I think there's some good stuff going here. I think the orange cone going with, there's a little bit of like pink smoke and then like the orange and colors in her dress, I think are really nice. I think we have a little bit of hair kind of blowing back. I would say right off that that extended elbow, just to keep it flexed instead of hyperextended, that always kind of bothers me just a little bit. That would be my first critique. Also, the vertical lines in the background, there's like a, I guess they're shipping containers or corrugated something, but they're kind of all over the place. And so, right, having chaos is good. And then having a model against chaos can be really good. But we need that chaos to be either very askew and very chaotic, or it needs to be very rigid so that the curves of the girl or the curves of the guy can offset against the verticality or the structure of that chaos. And so that would be the first thing I would fix. I don't know if y'all can see those lines in the background. I would straighten those up a little bit. I would also use my radial filter to put some exposure into the center of the frame, to get your eye there, because right now the brightest thing is her right foot. I'm not a foot guy. Um, so I would want my exposure to be a little bit more on her face, and kind of the center of the frame, and less away from the feet and that hemline. Right, we see the whites in the hem, and it kind of takes it away, from our face. But I think I like the horizontal, what she's sitting on. It may be a dumpster for all I know. So it's fun, just a little bit cleaner edit. And I think we might get somewhere with that. So good job, Marion High School. Good job, Tiffany. Good job, Farmhouse. All right, this one comes to us from Miss Kimberly Four. Guess what I'm going to talk about? Let's talk about the good, right? I love the glow. Ooh, darker skin tone, that glow. Look at like right above her right ear, left ear, kind of neck area. Look at that glow as it wraps around her. Chef's kiss, really good. It's a really good job of like lighting. Kind of, I guess I'm guessing there's maybe a reflector in front. I'm not sure, or maybe that's just the edit. But I really love the warmth and the glow that we're getting. We have it, we can see it in the grass. We can see it in her clothing, see it in her skin, and then see it in her jewelry. Right. So we have all this like gold that was there, golds and browns. Okay, that's all really well done. The skin looks great, eyes look good, hair looks great, jewelry's popping, and we have that wraparound glow. All good. Guess what we're gonna say though? Something mean, right? What happened to her hands, man? Like, don't chop them off right at the wrist. So I think this photo could be fixed in two ways. One, either compositionally back up just a foot and see her hands, right? We could pose her different at the time, right? Crossed, up, over, hands up, something like that would work. I do like that she's leaning to the camera. I like that she's she's bent at the hips to kind of lean toward the camera. I like all that. The other thing we could do is just crop in, right? So if we crop kind of right at her biceps, right above the elbows, I think that crop would work better. It just bothers me that, like right at the wrist, her hands got chopped off. Don't do that, please, please. I know everything else is great. Like everything else is really good. I really love the glow. I love her skin. Like it looks really nice. But just the hands, yeah. Right. Get her hands in her face. Vogue, Vogue, Vogue. Right. But everything else is really well done. I love everything else about this photo. All right. Oh, Miss Patty Robertson. Patty sent me this photo. She goes, "This is my first flying food shot." And this is really cool. It's interesting. It kind of plays with your brain a little bit because it's levitating. Ooh. Is the food taking off? Is it landing? Is it flying in? Is it a magician? I'm not sure. So a couple things going on here. One, I think the exposure on the bottom of the frame is just a little too bright. There's kind of a real sharp transition from the highlight to the shadow in the wood. I would just a little bit of a gradient tool, negative gradient tool to do that. Secondly, this is another photo that I just kind of played around with. I didn't change any of the toning, but the only thing that bothers me is that the food is just floating. So I took it into Photoshop. I changed nothing else, but I added motion blur. And I don't know if it's better. This certainly might not be better. But it at least gives food the direction that it's falling. So I did a radial blur and then a layer mask and then just kind of painted in around the edges of the food, just to kind of show some blur there. So it looks like it's landing on the plate instead of just hovering. It's too sharp. It's too crisp. So we had to kind of rough it up a little bit to get some motion into it. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm sure it was a great exercise. I'm curious how many frames, Patty, if you're still listening, how many frames did it take you to do this shot? Like how many different, it was like the bread one, the meat one, the tomatoes one, the cucumbers one, the onion one. Yeah. It's really cool. I've never tried doing this. I've seen it done a lot, but I've never actually done it. So yeah, it was really cool. I was excited to see it. I was excited to play around. I was like, oh, it looks like it needs to be moving. Yeah. So that's what I would do. Only three? Wow. You only did it in three? That's great. Very cool. Very interesting. Um, yeah. The other thing I would say is the plate at the bottom, just no layers. You do this all in one? Yeah, it is labor intensive. Holy moly. The other thing for food photography in general, if you want to make food look better, smaller plates. It makes the food look more heroic. Um, so, yeah, I'd go for a smaller plate. And I may have moved some of the fruit more toward the background. I would have given myself more of a background there. It's all kind of close to the plate. I would have kind of had food at different layers to give it just a little more depth. Or maybe in front of the plate to give it some foreground. So, cool. Awesome. All right. This is Steven just showing off. This is Steven Burkett just going, hey, you know what, guys? I used to go to Alaska and make these really cool photos and you didn't. Ha ha ha. He's saying mean things to us with this photo. Who wants this photo hanging in their room, right? I do. Yeah. Good job, Steven. I don't know. I don't know what you want me to say bad about this one. I'll say average mean things, right? The mean average kind of thing. This guy, I don't know, man. This is a great photo. What are you doing to me here? You're making it too nice. Yeah, Alaska. This is Snake River, I think. We have fog rolling in. We have like peaked sunlight on the water. We have shadows in the middle ground, highlights on the peak. Yeah, this is great. Something to think about here though too is right the weighting of this photo. Right, the interesting part below is the river. Right, the snake of the river has a certain amount of weight to it and is balanced against the lit part of the peaks. Right, so we kind of have like interesting area at top, fog and shadows in the middle, interesting area again at the bottom. So we have this balance. Right, the top half of the photo is balanced with the bottom half of the photo, but it's not a landscape shot where the horizon's necessarily in the center. Right, a lot of landscape photos, it's exactly right. It's exactly in the center, and so this has a foreground running up to Denali. Sorry, Denali. So this has something running right up to the peak, and then because it has a peak, it's kind of creating a triangle. And so we have an S curve with a triangle. Rule of odds, right? What does the brain like? We like odds. We like ones, threes, fives, sevens. We don't like twos, fours, and sixes. And so that peak going up creates our triangle, right? So that's one. And then the snake of the river, right? The S of the river creates another rule of odds. So we have a rule of odd at the bottom, a rule of odd at the top, and then now we have compositional contrast. So, all right. Good photo, Steven. Really nice. All right. This one's from Mr. Brian. He submitted a color photo, but then took all the color out of it. No, he said he just did a minimalist edit with this somewhere in Colorado, I guess is what he said. So this is somewhere in Colorado. I played around with this one. This is Brian's edit that we're seeing now. The next photo I'm going to show you is my edit. I dig the kind of minimalist vibes going on here. We have a broken down yellow bus against a blue sky, and then we have a telephone pole. It almost looks like the telephone pole is anchored to the bus and is creating like a suspension bridge. Can y'all see that? Does that make sense? So we almost have like a suspension bridge bus broken down. So, I like it. I like that, again, our horizon line isn't directly in the center. All of that visual data at the bottom is enough to balance against the visual data above the photo. And then on the left-hand side of the frame, we have the bus and the telephone pole. And on the right-hand side, it's just completely negative, right? There's nothing there, really. And so, for me, I have a hard time doing minimalist like this painterly style. That's hard for me to do. If you've met me, which most of y'all have, I'm kind of loud and obnoxious. And so my edits tend to be loud and obnoxious. I don't know if everybody's ever put those two together. But loud and obnoxious Josh becomes loud and obnoxious Josh's photo edits. And so I try to go with more of like a super saturated sky. And I really wanted to play up the relationship between the yellow in the bus and the blue in the sky, right? So really just like hitting the viewer over the head with my velvet hammer of saying, yellow, blue, look, there's yellow, blue. I know, I like this edit. I just want to show you what you could do. I'm not saying that Brian's is wrong in any way. I like the desaturated feel of this. It feels very 70s abandonment feel. So Josh is weird, right? So, I really boosted the brightness of the yellows, boosted the saturation, darkened the sky, darkened everything, and really, I was kind of going for like a cross processing effect, like a film cross process, where you might shoot, E film and process it with C processing. There's my kids laughing, but just giving it that almost a surreal edit that it's a little bit more unreal. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying this one's right. Just to give you an idea of like what you could do with this to really bring out yellow, blue, right? Annoyingly so, probably. I think Brian's is a little bit smoother and just more kind of like washed out, bummed out. Yeah. This one feels more cinematic. This one feels more like me. So. Anyway, I'll throw this preset out, and I'll write a post this week, and I'll drop them all in there. So, anyway, good job, Brian. I like this photo. I like the weighting of it, so it's good. All right, this one's from Emily, Miss Engineering. A guy in a tuxedo and a gun. I don't know. Is he? There's a story here, and I don't know the story, but is a daughter about to be married? Against her will? Like, what's happening here? I'm not exactly sure what's going on. I do like that there's a foreground element, so that front cactus, right, places him inside this ring of cactus, right? Having that front cactus that with the sunlight glow is forcing you to make it feel like they're inside there. My first little nitpick, there's some stuff. Professional photos for LinkedIn. Okay. There is just some little stuff in the background there, like two white dots on the very left-hand side. I would clone those out. They're just bright enough to be distracting. The other thing I would say is like his skin's just a little bit underexposed. I would brighten up just the reds and oranges to bring out his skin just a little bit. In the HSL panel in Lightroom, you can go and take the eyedropper in luminance and brighten up, just point it on his cheek and then just drag up just to bring up that skin just a little bit. Because there's so many bright spots with it being backlit, which is totally fine. But it would, I think it would bring his skin up a little bit so he pops, right? Because that's what we're supposed to see. We're supposed to see him because he's in focus. If he wasn't in focus, then I wouldn't care so much. But because he's in focus, he's the thing that you're telling us to look at. And so because of that, I want to see him just a little bit brighter. I would also bring down the blacks a little bit and make that black tux black or blacker instead of kind of faded gray, because I bet it's not. So yeah. Yeah, nothing up his sleeves. Yeah, he does have. Hey. But did y'all notice the glasses in his outside coat pocket? His glasses are also there. Yeah. Anyway, I like this photo. It's fun. I think coming in just a little bit might help too. We don't need that sky on the top left. We don't need that tree on the top left. You could even go with a 16:9 crop and just crop just above his head and get rid of all that data that doesn't really help. I think a more cinematic crop and then just come in just a little bit on that left edge. I think would get you there as well. And then his jacket, I would just take the shadows down his jacket because it's supposed to be a black jacket, not a gray jacket. So cool. All right, this one comes in late from Miss Kiera. She sent this photo to me like at 6:30. Like, I forgot. Can you please include it? And her question was, she was playing around with this and trying to light it differently. Whatever she was doing, just she didn't feel like it worked. So as we're looking at it, what are some things that y'all might notice, right? I think the weight of it is good, right? It's symmetrical, right? The lights, there's two lights on either side that are correct. We have a center, so we have like 5 things above them, right? Rule of odds. So we have light, light, stained glass, light, light. That's good. The pews are pretty much symmetrical. They're there in the center. So I think compositional wise, I think we're pretty strong. I don't think there's a lot to change there. I think the light on them is pretty good. Her question to me specifically was, hey, with the second light, like where would I put it? What would I do? Here's what I would do. I don't know if it was feasible. Here's what I would do. One, I might have raised my ambient a little bit to let that stained glass above be a little bit brighter. Two, if you make that brighter, then you can put a flash pointed directly at your camera behind them, like all the way behind them. And then I would use my canned, backlight, yeah. But then I would use my canned atmosphere, and then I would gel that backlight orange tungsten to pick up on the same color as those lights behind to make it feel like that light was coming from the stained glass. You could also gel it blue and pick up on the blue in that stained glass and make it feel like you had the blue light coming at you. But you're only going to see it if you give some texture in the air. So having somebody spraying that canned air, right? You can't let off a smoke bomb in a church, but with that canned atmosphere, you can. And so that's what I would do. I would throw some atmosphere up in the air and either gel it orange or blue just to pick up on the colors on the stained glass behind it to make it feel like there's a light coming behind. I would raise the light stand behind him as high as it could go so that it was at the bottom of the stained glass to make it feels like that last bit of sun is shining through that. And then maybe like crouch down just a little bit so that their heads are closer aligned to that stained glass. So if you were to come down a little bit and shoot up, their heads are going to go up in the frame and the back's going to come down. Put a light back there, shine it right there and throw some haze in the air and let it pick up all that color as it's coming in. That's what I would do. But great suggestion. Great suggestion. And that's it for this week. Or this month. So we'll be doing some more. I have to figure out my schedule for February. But really good job, guys. Really good job. I have to figure out my schedule for February's stream. I'll be doing that in the next week. So I'll be putting that out in our newsletter and on Patreon. And then, so for Lightroom Live, we're going to be doing, I'm going to do a speed edit. I'm going to show you how I edit a whole bunch of photos very quickly. Some of it is how we shoot. But some of it is also how we edit. So I want to show you that. And then for our says mean things, if you want me to do an edit, just let me know. Basically, just send me the raw file and a JPEG and I'll figure out what you mean. And I'm happy to do those. I think it's an interesting way just to get a fresh set of eyes. Sometimes I don't know what to do with my photos. Actually, the photos I'm supposed to be editing today, I just don't know I don't know what direction to go with them. So sometimes having a fresh set of eyes, look at what you're doing and providing you a direction, then you can kind of go from there. But when you can do everything, it can be limiting sometimes. And so having somebody do a little bit of work can get you kind of the rest of the way there. So, yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. Y'all were really great in the comments today. Appreciate it. Josh says mean things. Shirts. Thanks to all my Patreons. Patreon.com/Azulox. Thank y'all for supporting us. Also, we're going to try to start podcasting again. It'll be season 2. We did do 16 episodes in 2020. So I hope to do another 10 or 15 in 2021. So yeah, if you have suggestions for that, send them my way and I'll shout out to them. All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next in a couple weeks. All right.